In this video, we will review uploading data into the Power BI Query Editor. To access the Query Editor, after opening Power BI Desktop, in the ribbon at the top of the screen, click on the drop-down under Transform Data, and then click on Transform Data once again. And that will launch the Power BI Query Editor, which is where your files will be uploaded to, and where you can also do your data transformations. There are multiple ways to load data into Power BI. The data we now have in the application are CSV files, which originate on my desktop. And if I wanted to upload them from my desktop, I would click on New Source, then Text CSV, and then simply locate the files on my desktop. Here's the folder where my files are stored. I can double click and load the file into the application. If the intention is to use the Power BI online service, it may be better to store your data within Azure. In a previous video, we covered how to create storage containers in Azure, but I will show how to connect a file stored in Azure into the Power BI application. Here are the files stored in Azure. To upload them into Azure, you would simply click on Upload and browse for files. And here you could either upload one file at a time, multiple files, or all of the files by clicking to select all files, and then down at the bottom right, click Open, and you can upload all of the files at once. If the files have been uploaded previously, you will get this message warning that these files are already loaded, and then giving you the option to overwrite them with the new data. You would click on Upload, and then you would have your files uploaded into Azure. To connect the file to Power BI, you would click on the file, and then where you have this URL, copy the URL address, go to Power BI, and click on New Source, Web Source, and paste in the URL. Click OK, and that will load your file into the application. Again, in a previous video, we walked through this in more detail, but these are the steps required to connect the file to Power BI once that configuration is done. So now that we have the data loaded, I'll click on one of the files, and we can review the data that's been uploaded into the application. This file contains household and position information. We also have our income file. Over on the right, under Applied Steps, these are the steps that were taken to process or clean up the file prior to loading it into a report. Here is the file upon loading it into Power BI, and the first step would be to make the first row the column headers, and to do that, you would click on Use First Row as Headers, and that'll promote the headers. You can rename columns. In this case, I'm going to make the household name uppercase text, and to do that, I would right-click on the column, select Transform, and then select Uppercase. If you have columns that need the data type to be modified, in this case, the total value for the households is a number. It's being recognized as a text, so I would right-click on that column, select Change Type, and I want this to be a fixed decimal number since this is a dollar value, and I only want two places after the decimal. I will also make changes to the classifications of the position data. Here I'm going to make the description of the securities uppercase, and to do that, I would right-click, Transform, and select Uppercase. The next thing is under the classification column. To keep all of the cash securities consistent in terms of the way they're labeled, I'm going to change cash and equivalents to be labeled as cash. And to do that, again, I would right-click and select Change Value, and wherever the label is cash and equivalents, I'll change that to cash. And the last thing I will do is remove the null values. Under the position market value, there are no values in this column. So I'm going to remove those by selecting the column and deselecting null. Click OK, and that will remove every row that has a null value in that particular column. The rest of the data sets don't need much editing, and most of the editing that's done is similar to what we just did in the household account and positions table. It's just doing some cleanup and modifications to the data. There's no major changes in the way the data is structured. We don't need any changes here other than just making the household name uppercase, so we have uppercase for the household name in all of the reports. The household and accounts and households tables are really for creating relationships among the tables. I'll explain that when we go to that topic, but all we have here is two tables. The household and accounts table is filtered so that there's a unique account ID for every row. We don't have any duplicate account ID, so essentially what we've done is removed the position data and then selected remove duplicates. And what we do when we remove the duplicates is we want to remove the duplicates by selecting both the household ID and the account ID. So I'll press Control and I'll select the account ID as well, so I have both of those columns selected. Right click and remove duplicates. That'll remove the duplicate account IDs for each household. And under households, We have a row for each household. There are no duplicate household IDs in this table. And again, I'll explain why this is necessary when we go on to the topic of creating relationships between the tables. But these are two important tables to create. And you can start with your household accounted positions table and then remove columns and remove the rows that are unnecessary in creating these two tables. Month-end date is just simply the month-end date for the period we're reporting on. The performance and flows, all of the work was done for this table prior to uploading into Power BI, so we don't need to do any additional work on this table. The one we do need to spend some time modifying is the annual performance table. So we're going to walk through the steps that were taken to prepare this file. Here's the condition of the file as it was uploaded into Power BI. One of the things that will be needed is under column 2, the household name and household ID will need to fill each row in this column. And to do that, the first step required will be to change the blank rows to be null. So I'm going to click on a blank row, select Replace Values, and what I'm going to do is anywhere there's a blank value, I'm going to replace it with null. So click OK, and now we don't have blank rows, we have rows with the word null in them. The next thing I'm going to do is promote the headers by clicking on Use First Row as Header. I need to rename some columns, and then under Transform, I'll select Fill and click on Down, and that will replace all of the null values with the household name and the household ID. Now I want to split the values in the household ID column, and I also want to get rid of the word for. So to do that, I'll select Extract Text After Delimiter, and I'm going to extract all of the text after the colon sign. So that leaves us with the household name and the household ID. Here is a situation where we have a space in front of the text, so I'm going to use the Trim Text feature. Right-click, Transform, and Trim, and that will remove the space that exists before the word sample. I'm going to skip to the Merge Query step. This is where we'll add the income data to this table. So within the report, the table that includes this annual performance data will also include a column for the income. So from the annual performance table, I'm going to click on Merge Queries. In this case, I'm just going to click on Merge Queries in. That'll open up a window that'll allow me to merge the annual performance table with the income table. And the two columns in each table that I want to use to connect this data are the household ID and the year. I want to choose both of those. I'll remove what was done previously, and I'll select household ID and then hit Control and this other column I want to use, which would be year. And I'll do the same thing in the income table. I'll select household ID and press Control and select the year. And the way I want to join the tables are I want every row from the annual performance table and then the matching rows from the income table. So I'm going to use a left outer join. You can see that there are several options to join the table, but in this case I'm going to use a left outer. So again, I get every row from the annual performance table and then the matching rows from the income table. Because there can be years or households that do not generate income, I want to make sure that if a household doesn't generate income, it's still part of my data set. So I'll click OK. So now we have a column here that is the annual income for each household. So I'm going to click on this box here to expand the columns. And the column I need is the annual income column. I don't need these other columns. I'm just going to select the annual income column, click OK, and now we have as the last column in the table the annual income for each household. I'll rename the column to annual income, and I'm also going to move the annual income column to a different area in the table. I'll place it just after the inflows. So now we have our table with annual returns combined with our table with annual income. In the next video, we'll cover connecting the tables and why you have the table structured with unique household IDs and unique accounts.